Okay, with spring on the horizon, many people will be contemplating about doing a thorough cleaning of their homes. So, here to tell me more, I'm joined by Dr. Sarah Jarvis, talking to me about the things that often get overlooked when cleaning that house and basic hygiene. Welcome to the show, Dr. Sarah Jarvis. I wanted to ask what parts of your house carry high levels of bacterium?
Well, lovely to be with you. This was a study by Microban 24, the new 24-hour disinfectant brand, and they were looking to learn more about the bacteria in our homes and maybe shine a light on those high-touch surfaces where we've got particularly high levels of bacteria, but they're often neglected when it comes to cleaning. Now, what they did was to divide their research into two areas. Firstly, there were swab tests, which were taken on high-touch surfaces from a typical British family home. And then in a laboratory environment, they were examined for bacterial growth, a pretty standard procedure. But they matched that with a survey to find out about the nation's cleaning habits and our attitudes towards hygiene. When they looked at the swab results, they found that the candle of the kettle had more bacteria than a toilet seat. The kitchen taps, one of the most contaminated areas in your typical home, and the bin lid also showed significant bacterial growth. In fact, even the sink splashback had bacterial growth, in this case Pseudomonas, which is more commonly found in plants and soil.
So, some daunting facts there, not many people know. And additional to that, I wanted to add a set of keys and and maybe light switches as well and plugs
Mm.
because everyone's kind of touching them with their hands.
You're absolutely right. And I think one of the issues we need to bear in mind is that more than more than 3 in 4 people nationally expect their cleaning products to offer long-lasting protection. But of course, that isn't usually the case. So even if you do disinfect a surface, bacteria can redeposit if you've used the standard disinfectant, and that means they can grow back on the surface. So although people were cleaning most of these areas fairly regularly, so for instance, 2/3 of people said they were cleaning their light switches as part of their daily routine. 2/3 of people said that they were cleaning their telephone landline handsets, and then 3/4 of people were cleaning their bin lids. And yet we found those significant levels of bacterial growth on bin lids as well as in those other areas. And I think really what that brings home to me is that, it's completely unrealistic to clean after every touch. And yet 3 in 4 people expect their cleaning products to offer lasting protection. But actually, if the surface is unprotected, you can disinfect it and get rid of the bacteria. But the moment somebody touches it, you can redeposit bacteria.
And I wanted to ask, you mentioned wiping down. Um, could more people be wiping bacteria with bacteria? So they use a tea towel and then they're kind of going over that surface again with that tea towel or dishcloth.
We do need to be careful about how often we clean our dishcloths, because there's no question that they can harbour bacteria, especially if they've gone from one surface to another. But even if you are using a completely fresh cloth, or if you're using kitchen towel, for instance, to make sure that you're only using it once, even if you're disinfecting with a standard disinfectant, you can get rid of all the bacteria, but then they can be redeposited. And of course, your view is, well, I've wiped it down. Job done.
And 1 in 3 people, 29%, you mentioned don't regularly clean their door handles and light switches and what have you. And a tenth of those questions admitted wiping down the toilet and flushing is not part of their cleaning routine.
So, in fact, 3% of people said they admitted they'd never wiped down the toilet and the flush as part of their cleaning, which is really quite disconcerting, especially given that 20% of people, 1 in 5, believe it's one of the most contaminated areas in our home. And it is one of them, but I suspect that very, very few people would have worked out that the handle of the kettle, the kitchen taps, were going to be
Yeah,
more contaminated.
yeah, they're major points there. Also, remote controls.
hmm So about half of people were not washing, wiping down their remote controls. Now, in some households, I'm not saying this is the case in mine, but I know that in some households, the remote control is a constant source of battle, and only one person has control of the remote control. But actually, if we look at other things, for instance, most people have their own mobile phones, but certainly a landline, more than one people are using. Gaming controllers, often many people are using, and certainly stair railings, banisters, internal door handles, front doors, all of those things are likely to be used by multiple people.
And only 55% of people wash their hands after coming home from a public place such as the supermarket as well.
Yeah, and really importantly, I think even more disconcertingly for me, 1 in 4 people admitted to not washing their hands regularly after they went to the loo, and only about half of people who had kids said that they were confident their children did. Now, I think, these days we have got much more aware of the importance of hygiene. I'm not suggesting that we all need to live in a sterile environment. In fact, I'm actively not suggesting that, because, children, we all need some exposure to bacteria to help us build immunity, but we do need to be mindful of bacteria that are carried by other people. And if you go out, for instance, to a public place, and particularly as things start to open up, after all, it's only a few weeks until we're able to meet in groups of 6 outdoors, and then, of course, in groups of 6 indoors. It's not very long until shops, hopefully, non-essential shops, start to open up. So all of those are going to be meaning that we are having far more contacts outdoors and bringing those contacts back into the home if we're not washing our hands. And indeed, it's impossible unless, again, we trap ourselves in a sterile bubble to avoid things coming in from outside. It's not just other people who come in, but it's things that other people have touched that might come into the house.
And we mentioned certain bacteria. Can you just tell me in brief the ones to watch out for?
Well, the ones that they looked for were the standard ones that the regulatory authorities routinely require them to look out for. So that would include E. coli, Pseudomonas, and one called Staph or Staphylococcus aureus.
And dust as well. Dust can be quite a nuisance as well. Is it good to keep on top of dust as well in the home?
Well, certainly many people are allergic, for instance, to house dust mites, which grow around us all the time, but they're there in the dust. So, for instance, you may find that if you have allergies such as hay fever, possibly if you have asthma, you may well find that it's a good idea to keep on top of those. And certainly people who have, say, asthma, we sometimes recommend that rather than having carpets in the house, for instance, that you look to get wooden floors that you can mop more easily and keep the dust down.
And of course, bedding as well. How often should people change their sheets?
Well, again, if you have allergies, then you may be more prone. And I think there we particularly need to think about, for instance, say duvet covers and pillows rather than the coverings of them, because duvet covers and pillows can certainly harbour house dust mites. So if you have asthma, which is made worse by those if you're allergic to it, then you may well find that they make things worse.
Thanks so much. And finally, what steps can we take to keep a high level of hygiene in our homes?
We need to bear in mind that it is completely unrealistic to clean after every touch. We need to bear in mind that even though most of us expect our cleaning products to offer long-lasting protection, that isn't usually the case. We also need to bear in mind that while we may be hygienic, others might not. So those very high-touch areas are things that we need to be more conscious about. The handle of the kettle, the kitchen taps, the stair railings, the door handles, and so on.
Well, thank you very much, Sarah. Well, I'm joined by Sarah Jarvis today, talking to me about the things that often get overseen or overlooked when spring cleaning that house, and some priceless basic hygiene tips as well. Great to have you on the Danny Sun syndicated unique shows.
Absolute pleasure. If people want to find out more, they can visit supersavvyme.co.uk. It was great to be with you.
Yeah, there you have it. Thank you very much.